In this video I will go through how you can make a fully functioning lighthouse in Unreal Engine. I have added it to this island map and can travel to it by boat. Currently the lighthouse is off and inactive. When the boat goes within range of it, a foghorn sound will play and the lighthouse will activate. The trigger range has been made smaller for showcase purposes. The light rays of it is actually visible as you can see, and it shines in both directions. I placed the lighthouse in this smaller island with foliage, rocks, and a small shelter. There is a door that can be opened and it also activates lights so the interior can be seen. This lighthouse has a full interior so the player can walk up to it. There is a ladder, but I just gave the player an increased jump height to showcase it. You can now see the lighthouse up close and it looks realistic and the rays are visible still. You can place the lighthouse wherever you want, and this is just an example island I made so it can be used for any purpose you want. The materials use PBR textures so it looks high quality even up close. This lighthouse is fully modular so the colors can be changed. This variable controls the hue of the main stripes and top. The door color can also be changed, but that is just an extra customizable I added. The glow amount of the light can be changed too, as well as the max rotation speed. If you purchase the project files you will get this exclusive control panel system. The player can interact and it will blend to a different camera view with depth of field to focus on just the lighthouse. Each individual light can be toggled separately and the rotation value can be set from 0 to the max amount you set for clock and anti-clockwise. The rotation can also be manually started and stopped. The control panel model actually updates to show the values with the two bulbs showing if the lights are on and the meter and readings updating to show the rotation status. I am going to use a model which I modeled myself in Blender, but you can use any. Here are some good examples on Sketchfab, although they don't have interiors so you may need to find a different one with one or add it yourself. You don't need an interior as well if you don't want. Here is the model I made. It has a full interior. I also separated the components where required. You need the mesh with the actual lights to be separate so it can be rotated in engine. I also have a door mesh I separated and pivoted so it rotates around the hinges. If you have lights you can make them separate too. I have a wall and ceiling lantern variant. You can separate other components too if you want to give them unique functionality, such as this weather vane arrow. I imported them in engine and applied the materials. Here is the master material setup I used. It has options to add macro variation and to add multipliers and choose maps. Again, this is for my lighthouse model so yours might be different. One thing that is important is that your material needs a parameter to control the emissive amount for the lanterns and the main light. Currently the model cannot be walked into. This is due to the auto collision. Since this is a structure we want to walk into with a proper interior, we need exact and accurate collision. You can do this by opening the lighthouse static mesh, then adding collision. Now search for collision complexity and change it to use complex collision as simple. This basically adds collision for the faces of the mesh so it is 100% accurate. Now I can walk inside it. It is dark so we need to add lighting after. For the accessories such as the door you can add sockets to the lighthouse static mesh. Now make a new actor called Lighthouse. Add the main mesh to it. Now add static meshes for the accessories and set the parent socket to the corresponding one. The door will be a separate actor so we can add interaction to it. I will now make the door blueprint. I will speed this part up as it is not the main focus of the video. To make it interactable I use a simple BPI I made earlier in the water series. Then I add a box collision around the door to detect the player. To make the door open when the interact key is pressed, I use a timeline that simply rotates the door back and forth. Finally I added the door to the lighthouse and set the socket. The door can now be opened and closed. I added sound effects for this later off camera since it is just a simple play sound node. I will now show how you can make the colors customizable. This will let you change the color of different ones in the editor directly. My material had a hue shift since it was just a white and red texture, so it will shift the red part only. You might need a different approach based on the textures of yours. This is the slot that has the red colors. You can set the range of the values from 0 to 1 as it will just repeat after that. I will also make the door color customizable off camera, which uses the exact same code setup. To make it changeable in the editor, click the eye icon next to the variable which sets it as instance editable. Now in the editor you can change these values and it will update in real time since we added the code in the construction script. For the lighting, I will add sockets to the lantern meshes where the light should be attached. Then I made an actor for each type. I added a point light to the wall lantern and adjusted the values until it looked right. I made it look soft and orange so it looks realistic. I then placed them inside the lighthouse under a scene component. It is the same process, so I finished it off camera. I used the emissive strength to make the lantern's material brighter. For the ceiling lanterns I used a spotlight instead of point. I added them to the roofs of the interiors. Here is how the lighting looks. Now the interior can be seen properly. I then made it so that all the lights are off by default but are turned on when the door opens, then back off when it is closed. I coded this by having a function in the lights to set the material parameter and visibility of the light, then on the timeline, and I call it with the input true or false based on if it was opened or closed. I did this off camera again since it is not the focus. I will now start the actual lighthouse functionality. First, make an enumeration called toggle type with the values off, single left, single right and double. This will let us choose which lights are toggled. This is my lightbox mesh. Add sockets to either side of it for where the spotlights will go. Now make a new actor for it and add the mesh. I will test it in a night map variant so I can see the light effects better. I showed how to make a night scene like this in this video. For the lighthouse rays to show up, you need to have volumetric fog enabled on the exponential height fog. Now add a spotlight to the light box and set the parent to the left one. Make sure you rotate the sockets correctly so they face the right way. Add the light box to the scene so we can test it. Now modify the light settings to your liking. To get the light ray to show up, we need to increase this volumetric scattering intensity value. Manually type in a value like 1500. A value of 3000 looks good for me. Duplicate it for the right light. Now add a rotating movement component. This makes the whole actor rotate. Set the default rotation rate's Z value to 0 since it should be toggled manually. Now make a function called toggle light. Add a toggle type and float input as shown. Copy the code shown. Make sure the index is correct. My mesh has different material slots for the main frame, left light and right light. Promoting the dynamic material instance to a local variable will let us change the parameter values of it in the function without the variable needing to be global. By default, I will set the emissive parameter of both to 0 so it updates based on the new enum value. I will also set the visibility of both spotlights to false. Then get the type input and switch on. For the single left and right paths, we can set the value to the glow amount input. For double, add a sequence and connect it to both. We don't need anything in the off path as we just turn the lights off by default anyway. Make sure you set the visibilities to true here. Now select both lights and turn the visibility off so it starts turned off. Now go to the Lighthouse blueprint and make a function called toggle Lighthouse. This is the function that we will use to actually make the updates. Add a toggle type input. Also make sure you add the lightbox actor to it. Glow amount can be changed in editor just like the customizable color variables. A default value of 50 looks good. Rotation rate is another customizable value to control the speed of the lighthouse. Something like 90 works fine as it is not too slow or fast. That is all for the function here. You can call this function whenever you want it to toggle. Since your games will all be different, I can't show a singular specific use of it, but I will show an example soon. To test it is working, you can call the function on event begin play. It works as expected. You can adjust the volumetric fog's view distance so the light ray is seen from further away. Since they should be seen by boats, it is a good idea to make the value larger to something like 20,000. You have to manually type it as the slider is capped at 10,000. The light rays may not look perfect, and one way to fix it is with console commands. To fix the blurry edges, you can use the shown console command. A lower value will make it look sharper and smoother, but do not set it to 1 as it will lag out your PC. 2 can work, but not when there are many lights in the scene, so a value of 3 works best for me. It looks much more smoother now around the edges of the start. You may also notice a weird trail being left behind when it rotates. I wasn't able to find the perfect fix for this, but one way is to use this console command. While this solution works, it might cause some other issues when you look around where there are weird artifacts around the distance. I will now make a small island area for the lighthouse to go. You can skip this part as it is just an example of how the lighthouse can be placed in a realistic environment in a game. I use the landscape sculpt tool to make an area. I didn't use the land mass since I need an area to be flat for the lighthouse and shelter to go, and the flatten tool can't be used on land masses. I then painted it so it is grass instead of sand. Next I added vegetation foliage to the grass. I added some rocks to the edge where it transitions from sand. I then added some trees. To make it look more realistic, I added some quickscale rocks around the edge, and these have runtime virtual textures so it blends with the landscape realistically. The techniques I used to make these are shown in greater detail with explanations on my realistic island tutorial. Here is the final island area. Finally, I will show an example of how it can be used in an actual game. I will make the lighthouse toggle when the boat gets close enough to it. To detect actors that enter its range, I will use a trigger sphere. I made the radius much larger since it is a lighthouse and should be able to see boats from a distance. I will just add the code functionality in the level blueprint, but again you need to do it according to your game needs. To detect for actors, I will add a bind event to actor begin overlap on begin play. This checks that the overlapped actor was a character and calls toggle lighthouse with double type on the lighthouse in the scene directly. This approach didn't work, however, so I instead just checked if the actor is the currently controlled pawn, which will be the boat, or the player if they decide to swim to it. This approach will not work for boats that are driven by AI or for multiplayer, but again, this is just one example. I can now swim to this jet ski. The lighthouse is toggled off by default as I removed the function in the begin play from it. When I enter close enough to it, it will be activated and start rotating. You can add a sound effect easily that plays when the lighthouse is toggled. You can make the lighthouse turn off when the overlap ends too. That is all for this video. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe for more content. You can purchase this final result from Patreon using the link in the description if you want. It will be included with the realistic island project files, and it has an exclusive control panel feature. The swimming and boats are not included as they are sold separately on Gumroad, so keep that in mind if you want to get these files. Thanks for watching.